Look, have it how you like. That's what dens are for. Good day.
Don't you know, talking about a revolution, it sounds like a whisper.
In words I only recently learned, and badly, failte is mais Ian. I admit to being a lowland Scot with some English habits. Before I start, I'm going to hit you with an oxymoron, a contradiction in terms, so I'm told. It's to say, I am not going to talk about the Barnett formula. The method of working out how much the UK Treasury gives in a block grant to Scotland every year. Except I have to say this, until the Scottish referendum came about, it was increasingly talked about, the Barnett formula, in terms of its very existence being a problem. Chiefly, its detractors say it's too generous to the Scots. Yet, when I visited family and friends in Scotland at that time, they said nothing was really made of it up there. Indeed, some people weren't even sure what it was for. So, let me just make my point now in one sentence. The Barnett formula, uncertainty, is what they call the elephant in the room when the No campaign talked finances and about Scotland's future economic prospects. In other words, they have forgotten to mention that even if you voted no by an overwhelming majority, this method of funding might be scrapped, or at least altered, to Scotland's detriment anyway. In terms of certainty, Scotland is not more secure by voting no, and is not something Scottish residents are even going to hear much about. The fact is, therefore, that associating the yes vote with uncertainty is sleight of hand, and a little disingenuous, to say the least. Your finances up there in Scotland are going to be no more uncertain, one way or the other. The differences are mostly presentational and spin. So I've now dispensed with the thing I wasn't going to speak of. My main point about Scottish independence is this. It has nothing to do with Scotland. Scottish independence has nothing to do with Scotland. By which I mean, the main determinant is 400 miles from the seat of Scottish power. The answer lies with London.
400 miles without a word until you smile. 400 miles on fields of fire.
In a sentence, greedy London is the reason why residents of Scotland, and that includes hundreds of thousands, if not million, English-descended populace, should vote yes to independence. London seems to have become narcissistic, and with the advent of the megaport 20 miles down the River Thames, it is hard not to feel the capital has pursued an exercise in preening its own navel. Of course, it makes perfect sense if you believe London exists in isolation and owes the countries that form the UK nothing at all. Apparently this port cost £1.5 billion. It would be surprising if this did not turn out simply to be the first phase. I moved to England in Thatcher's heyday of the late 1980s for employment. I did not realise that successive UK governments would look after the Londonista to the detriment of the rest of the country. I mean in England. I thought it was possible to have a life elsewhere than the southeast, to actually get more than one job in a row. I had faith in the provinces of England. I see now why so many of my compatriots simply pass most of England by, en route to the affluent south. I had hoped, and even expected, the imbalance would be addressed with some effort by successive governments. But it's not been seen as the flaw I thought it always was.
Don't try to say you're sorry. Don't say he drew his gun. They've gone and grabbed old money. He's not the only one saying it's a mistake. It's a mistake.
Globalism and the concept of a global city have really taken hold in the minds of world leaders. I think to call them seduced is not too strong a description. In another way, they're quite obsessed, the London set and Parliament it seems down there, with being at the top table, and that's something we hear a lot. My own parentage is mixed, Scottish mother and English father. We are relatives from the Northern Isles of Scotland down to the home counties of England. Perhaps that explains why I'm only a recent convert to the yes camp. Except no one really converted me. The arguments I heard seemed to settle nothing one way or the other. I might even say they've become sterile. It doesn't make a decision any easier. But then I don't get to vote anyway, as I live in the north of England. The London issue, though, is as plain as day. And with decades of evidence of London's leanings behind me, I find a conclusion straightforward to reach. My family's location is what makes it clear to me what Scotland should vote for. London's massive port will sink the northern city of Hull. Kingston upon Hull is a couple of hours' drive to the east of us. The new London port makes both it and the Dutch Rotterdam one look like scale models.
I've been stretching my mouth to let those big words come right out. I've had enough. I'm getting out to the city, a big, big city. I'll be a big noise with all the big boys. So much stuff I will own.
Perhaps Hull will get the benefit of the nuclear warheads of the Faslane submarines being stationed there, if Scotland votes yes. Not to worry, from personal experience on the Clyde coast, I can reassure the residents of Hull that 20 years after these subs arrive, nuclear leaks and their effect on microorganisms in the water will eventually be studied in secret. We in Yorkshire will get all the say in the matter that the Scots did back in 1962 when they arrived on the Clyde coast, Faslane. As my granny lived not far away, I feel I have to point out a couple of things about the whole nuclear submarine circus. Almost no information is publicly available about nuclear leakage, radiation levels, human and animal cancers, etc, etc in the air. The police on the camp are armed, and incursions from the permanent camp of protesters are not uncommon. These submarines used to travel underwater, even in the estuary, the Firth of Clyde. A few trashed boats and broken periscopes later, this was stopped. Irish fishermen still blame these things for ripping their nets up and even dragging boats down. They have to test torpedoes somewhere too, and they occasionally overshoot and pop up on the beaches. It took the best part of a quarter century from the sub's arrival for serious study of pollution effects to take place. Lastly on this, most will be aware that the UK government has let it stand that this submarine base will be a declared UK territory if Scotland votes yes, and it seems unfazed by the obvious connotations with Northern Ireland. Seriously, who does the government think it's kidding? It really would tolerate creating an Irish situation in the heart of Scotland. Well, I guess when you want to start a fight, any argument will do. It's a dismal prospect, but I believe it cannot matter a jot whether these sort of armaments are based anywhere in particular. It's nominal. The subs only go there for refits anyway. Dismal then, but remote. So we can continue, put that to one side, in a more civil frame of mind. The UK government has always been London-centric. It's just that this tendency has become not only chronic, but actually all-consuming. When a Tory peer that was one of Thatcher's top men speaks out in favour of creating once more great cities of the north, Lord Heseltine, we know the situation must be absolutely desperate. And it is. Many of you in Scotland, however, will know very little about London, and I don't mean in an ignorant way. You'll have even less connection with it than us in Yorkshire, or over the M62 in Manchester, or up there in Newcastle up the A1. Actually, my view is that there will have been a major effort put into damping down the London news, as it were, to disguise just how far gone, up its own orifice, the major UK global city has gone now.
London calling to the faraway towns. Now war is declared and battle come down. London calling to the underworld. Come out of the cupboard.
With every passing great event, the ego of London gets worse. Hubris is an understatement for what the Olympics did. The Channel, the tube upgrades, High Speed 2, railways, air traffic plans, the new Essex megaport, there's always just one more big project to keep the focus on the capital. It cares about being a global city much more than being the capital of the UK and England, the centre of the UK state. That's what all its actions make clear. The separation of news streams to the regions means you have to deliberately tune in to find out what's going on elsewhere. The webization has facilitated this fragmentation in news as well as every other communication front. TV, hundreds of channels. People don't have the commonality with communication they used to. Arguably, we're all less in touch with others than at any other time in recent history. Rest assured, however, all the driving is being done by London. It will have no intention of allowing a rival to flourish, so Birmingham is destined to remain a very poor second city indeed. She is a jealous one, London. High Speed 2 and Heathrow's third runway are all just sideshows. The important point is made by virtue of the fact that literally all routes lead to London, and all the talk is of stuff concerned with the place. The emphasis is on routes in, not the wealth out. The fact it's slowly sinking into the North Sea has not ruffled many political feathers, and if you've listened thus far you will know why. It's not because it's not a serious risk, it's because it's become accepted that a UK government will spend whatever it takes, by way of the UK's resources, to support London and assure its future. If you believe that you will apply infinite resources to solve any problem, you have infinite faith in the future. That is why no one is seriously concerned about crazy stuff like evacuating London or moving the centre of population towards the west or north a bit. It's not only unthinkable to the London mindset, but completely unnecessary. The amount of money officially spent on London is massive. I'm quite certain there is unofficially even more massive sum constantly poured into it, and more importantly and visibly underpinning it. We could start by counting the 20% extra pay or allowances you get for working there. In reality, the wage difference can be 100% for some jobs. Add that lot together, and that's where it all comes from. 7 million inhabitants with probably the lowest youth numbers proportionately in the country. I'm guessing everyone's too busy working. That means every corporation and government department has to subsidise the London cost of living. Whatever you get from these departments or corporations, you pay a slice to keep up appearances in London. You get the point I'm making.
This ain't no technological breakdown. Oh no, this is the road to hell.
New Governor of Bank of England Mark Carney must be realising by now just how crazy and obsessed by the London property market the entire UK monetary system is. Most of the others on the board have been inculcated from birth into the set of beliefs that inevitably lead them to want to drive UK-wide interest rates up without delay, because it will damp down about half of the property sales in London. That's right, not even all of London sales, because so many people from abroad pay cash. Never mind us sweaty jocks. Those moneyed people are the sort London really likes to attract, and they can leave houses derelict. Really, Google it. I would leave a house to fall into dereliction if someone else wants to pay to buy it for me in the first place. There's houses there with trees growing out of them, and they're worth millions. That's not a bubble though. The likeable Canadian is resisting, I am sure, very politely but firmly. But the conventional wisdom of the majority of the Bank of England board will win out, and soon. My guess, October. Anyway, well done Mark for holding out this long. Weird, isn't it? Don't worry, 3/4 of the UK has no idea why they do it either, basing nationwide policies on the behaviour of half of a niche pocket of exceptional and absolutely known to be a statistical outlier set of data. Welcome to the UK, buddy. All that said, I think the vote will be close and it will be no. For independent side. Everyone gets focused on the what-if questions, the uncertainties. To me, there are too many old people in Scotland. No offence, I am 51 years old now. My daughters think I'm already wheezing my last gasps. According to our daughters, I could keel over at any moment, so if I suddenly stop in mid-sentence... For retired people dependent on their UK pension, and such a huge stake in the status quo, surely any accountant would advise them to remain opted in to the UK system. Has it already got to the stage where internal UK migration and the peculiar stage we're at with UK pensions and retirement age means we cannot expect older voters to put this to one side when voting? I don't care what they've told the pollsters. These retirees will want their 5 months abroad, come what may. Who wouldn't, on a purely personal basis? Placed against the risks to their lifestyle, a historic independence vote is just not going to be important enough to shift their position. There is no doubt that in the context of their own lives, they earned this retirement. Not a shadow of a doubt. It just doesn't wash much when there are many who actually will never get to retire at all. Let's remember too, it's not entirely selfish. Many older people, not my age of 51, I mean really older people, are assisting middle-aged offspring to buy their first home and look after the babies. Messed up it might seem, but it's not all about themselves they may be thinking if they choose to vote no. Will they be in a position to help out grandchildren in future with university costs if Scotland turns fully independent? Things can change. Social mobility has gone. This next lot will be poorer and liable to see their X-Factor style dreams simultaneously squashed, and yet as likely a way to make a living as any other. They'll need all the help they can get. A fair point, surely. Society is divided now, and the haves vote more. You probably think this can matter, but not too much of an effect perhaps. Think about this. Margaret Thatcher never got more than about 16% of the eligible population to vote for her. 40% turnout and 40% voting for the Conservative and Unionist Party, that's 16% of the eligible voting public. But the other way around, 84% of those who could vote did not vote for her, and 60% of the people that actually turned out and voted deliberately voted for someone else. It's almost a perversion of democracy, it's so alien to the concept. But that's what we do. That's the method. With that 16%, she finished the coal industry. The car industry, bar one, that later got dropped by foreign owners BMW, the textile industry, sold off the water companies, the railways, and sold at mammoth discount loads of council properties that now were screaming out for, and so on and so forth. Council tax. That too. Took us to the brink of war with South America, and I'm not saying she could have done much else, mind you. 16 lousy percent of the voting population. I wonder if someone's worked out how many of those were bribed, in effect, by the promised legislation guaranteeing they could purchase their council house. A massive discount. Again, can you blame them? A significant number though. Not that the alternatives were actually realistic at the time. Google the whole dire mess of 1979 and thereabouts if you get bored sometime. It was Michael Foot and all that. Not credible at the time.
16, gonna spread my wings. 16, it's my chance to shine. 16, discovering 16, so much more to life. 16.
So the question really is, can the No campaign get the sort of minority turnout to vote for them that Thatcher did? I say they can, and probably will. All you can do as a truly free-thinking voter is have a clear conscience afterward. We can all vote for keeping ourselves in holidays and new cars and Centre Park weekends. But that all dies with us. This is a truly historic moment. Too many people are saying it probably. But be neither afraid, nor gallous, thinking you're all that. You will all be alive afterward. Still in one of the richest regions of the world that's stable enough to live in. And Kuwait's wealthy, for example, but it has some neighbours that are just too keen to hold bullet parties on a frequent basis. Take it from a Scot resident in England, we already face hostility from the people who disliked us anyway. That was a given from the off. After all, you can't talk about divorce without kicking off some kind of an argument or put a fence between neighbours where one did not exist without it being remarked upon. But the greedy London malaise is getting worse, and eventually it will dawn on the Scottish population that independence could be a shot in the arm in the short term, and at least insulates against the London black hole that is rapidly swallowing the best resources and people from the rest of the UK in the longer term. There are many points against an independent Scotland. I actually believe that the list is infinitely long. We could start with it becoming a banana republic, or with the cronyism and Edinburgh-centric, or at least East Coast-centric, view that might worsen after independence. We could talk about how to avoid creating a Scottish army, the odd stray shot fired, next thing you know, back into old fights again. And I would rather not fight old battles we thought were behind us.
Or a party life. And the hardest love of all is to forgive. And as the world comes tumbling down, give us peace in our time. Give us peace in our time.
But what for? I can categorically state that becoming an independent state is going to involve loss and uncertainty. It surely could be argued that the old joke holds. If you're in the muck, but are warm and happy, don't make a lot of noise about it. A very good friend said at least it, the UK, meant our children would grow up with somewhere to go, meaning London, to make a great living. Yes, but really, are they going to be barred from doing that if Scotland gets its independence?
You may look like we do, talk like we do, but you know how it is. You're not one of us. No, you're not one of us. Not one of us. No, you're not one of us.
I'm sure there's plenty of Canadians work in America. However you vote, you have the right to do so and keep it quiet, or not, as you decide. Best if the vote were 30% or 70% yes or no. It won't be. All I would say is, I don't believe London's really declared by its actions it cares much to spread the wealth of the UK or to act as a channel to bring the wealth in and boost the far-flung regions. It has artificially created its own economic atmosphere, and within that megacity bubble, it is indeed happy with its own progress. I won't even mention the financial chaos it helped induce that will leave millions crippled, broke, their families impoverished for generations to come. It's no good people saying it was a global phenomenon. Either the UK, London in the UK, is the seat of UK policy making and government regulation and high finance, or it's not. It was the major financial capital of Europe, so it is responsible for the crash. That's why on the continent, they're all going around saying it's an Anglo-Saxon mindset. They mean it's the Americans and us. It was slackness and over-incentivised greed that did it, and you can't host all those high flyers we apparently should be scared of collecting taxes from, without accepting they just might have engineered the greatest economic calamity in UK history. Of course, if Scotland votes yes on the 18th of September, next Thursday, this will become a mutable historical fact. The UK as it was will never again surpass this financial incompetence.
Mika, I've got my wellies on.
You have wellies.
I've got a pair in the back of the car, a pair of green ones.
That will outfit that.
Better, yuck. Mika, looks what's coming.
Woo! You can see it better from here.
Oh yeah, okay then.
High speed 2. If you were cynical, you might say that's to bring prostitutes and cleaners into London, to avoid employers paying extra costs to cover housing costs in the capital, extra wages. Expanding the air traffic is going to be yet another pull for a construction project in London. And the port, the massive port down Essex, means London gets first dibs on everything that comes in. My guess is most of the goods that arrive won't get outside southeast. The rest of the UK will get scraps, or whatever cheaper substitute goods care to dock by the northern wastelands way up there in Hull. MI5 will already have a contingency plan, and ISIS, Al-Qaeda, colonising types will be rubbing their hands at the thought of a large chunk of the UK being run by relatively few people. That makes you a target for bribery and corruption, I would have thought. Less Palms degrees. That's the way they'll think. A newly born Scotland will be gullible and naive, some might say. As a recently teetotal person for reasons of, shall we say, a conflict with my daily medicine bag, I can still recall the local park, the major bevy teenagers had down there on pretty much any night of the week, in any weather, and the trails of blood as they staggered in to the off-licence, turning it into something that looked a lot more like MASH in Korea for a minute. You know what MASH is? Google it. That's another problem Scotland hasn't solved. but then neither is the glorious UK. None of this changes the essential argument I am putting forward here. London has as good as left the rest of the UK to wither on the vine. It enjoys the foundation, the weight, the heft that having a small group of countries with 60 million potential taxpayers behind it, but denies it really owes much in return, and grudgingly meters it out to even, especially, the English regions.
He drinks a whiskey drink, he drinks a vodka drink, he drinks a lager drink, he drinks a cider drink. He sings a song to remind him of the good times, he sings a song to remind him of the better times. Don't cry for me, next door neighbour.
One point occurs to me, and this is merely an observation. 80% of the people in the UK live more than 80 miles outside London, but 80% of Scots live within 80 miles of Edinburgh. That alone makes Scotland much more viable as a fair and equitable state. You could walk to Glasgow to Edinburgh in a day to protest if need be. London has become an impregnable and distant ruling class. That alone makes Scotland more viable as a fair and equitable state. You could walk from Glasgow to Edinburgh in a day to protest if need be. London has become an impregnable and distant ruling class. You can see police in the streets there, I hear. My advice is to kick it to Dutch, and I make no bones about it. Of course, as I said, old people are welded to the existing UK system. But young people have little stake in this, and it's getting less as pension systems get meddled with more and become worth less, and the chances of getting to London, let alone prospering there, without a very privileged background, continue to diminish. There, as I said, the Scottish vote for independence has nothing to do with Scotland. Good luck to all of you. What the heck do I know anyway? Your vote will be your best guess no matter which way it goes, and you're entitled to cast it how you please in secrecy. I would just reiterate my earlier point that highlights how undemocratic voting can be. A maximum of around 16% of eligible voters were enough to empower Maggie Thatcher to spy on union leaders and sink the Argentinian flagship Belgrano and let the coal industry and car industry and shipbuilding industry go hang, taking with them millions of jobs. So turn out and vote. Whichever way you're voting, turn out. Unexpected sections of the community turning out and voting is what got Obama in the White House, remember. I drew an analogy earlier with Scotland and England / the UK splitting up being likened to a divorce. I have to admit to having had one, and it was awful for me to instigate and see it through, and probably in truth I never repaired fully afterward. Meanwhile, my ex actually had a future situation worth going to. The thing is, it was still better than the alternative. Either bring it to a head and move on with what emerges, or just simmer and boil about it for, well, 3 centuries or whatever.
It caused me and my wife
to have a big fight, and then both of them bit me. And that's why I am gonna get a D-I-V-O-R-C-E. She shouted, "Get on, Rover!" and he jumped over and bit.
If as Scots, and residents naturalised Scots, we do not settle it now, don't expect to be given a regular chance to do so as time goes on. Or on the same basis or rules. Again, you can Google the vote back in the 1970s. It had a controversial 70% threshold. Never happened in a general election, never happened in any other vote. It happened for that. And it was close as well. Lastly, these thoughts. Is anyone really happy in warm muck, afraid to make a sound lest a predator would pounce on them? Is that what the modern Scot is? A wee coorous timorous beastie? And hey, we in Yorkshire, or those other northerners over in Liverpool, the farmers up in Cumbria, the Newcastle crowd, we really then will be the scrag ends of the UK, even if they don't dump the nuclear subs in our estuaries. There's one last thing to handle before I bid you Bianach Lieb, the pound. Don't worry, this is short. It concerns simply the issue of undemocratic bias of loading the dice in advance of the vote. A vote like the Scottish independence one is actually skewed if effectively the no side can say, you will lose your currency if you vote against us. Is that alright? It's not alright. On a neutral and fair basis, it's not alright. A fair and equitable and neutral way to proceed is to have a UK Treasury plan worked out that supports Scotland's economic transition no matter which way the vote goes. Portfolio A, Portfolio B. We choose which one, depending on yes or no. They haven't got that, they say. To tell you that if you vote one way, your money is worth the same, voting no, but vote the other way, voting yes for independence, means it might be 80% of the value, for example. They let that simmer around. That's a clear attempt to influence the outcome of the vote unduly. Undemocratic and just a little bit biased. Scotland will have to be brave not to be influenced by such things as natural resources and the state of the currency. I mean, those are sort of the big guns. The Yes campaign's got the oil and stuff it talks about, and the No campaign's got the pound and all that. I finish up as I began in a language that's as foreign to me as Double Dutch. Bianach Liv, Siel Math Duv, which I hope means goodbye and good luck. Written and narrated by Ian Richard Margetts in Yorkshire, 10th September.